All right, so, hydrogen, water genesis. We live in a watery universe, plasmatic. Okay, so this is all about fundamental concepts, okay? Which is pictures, words, and temperature, not numbers. Like tic-tac-toe. It's a game, a numbers game. The numbers are to replicate the information. The fundamentals are knowing the information. So, nuclear winter starts out -460. Cold and hot are deterministic. It's like passing or failing. The spring and the fall are gradients, like grades in school. You get grades in school. They can either rise or they can fall. And at the end of the year, they determine whether you pass or fail. So hot and cold are deterministic, hot and cold. They're not gradients, they just are those temperatures. It's either hot, extremely hot, or it's extremely cold, and spring and fall are nexus. So you have winter, spring up, summer, fall, back to winter. So the negative X2 electron, negative, these are all electrons, and they condense into this boson-sun condensate, which is muonic. Now it has infinite square, infinite spatial value, condenses into a cryogenic fluid to reduce as much as it possibly can. So it's a plasmatic process. This would be the pinky, first stage, and it is a pinkish color before it moves to a violet color, and this would be semicolor. This is your ring finger, and this is spring, number 2. Now, this would be the tau. This is tauonic. It's also fermionic. Helium-3 refuses into helium-4 to come into carbon-14 and 13, which essentially becomes a macroneutron star, and Cooper pairs at -452.20 degrees Celsius. By the time you get here, spatial value is 0. This is a triple alpha process, and this is the mass, which is the singularity. This is stage 3. This is the hottest. The mass, the middle, full color charge. And now a reverse triple alpha process happens. And this is the pointer finger. This is stage 4, observation, time, matter. So mass times C2 equals the Big Bang, which is E, vaporization, cooling, fallout, and ashes. The breath of fire, exhale. It's a nuclear reactor. Take the C, you have 2C, which is creator. It's also Y here, triple alpha. R is 18. C2 equals C times 6 equals R. 2xC, 2xR. This is recombination. Solid matter forms similar to hail and rain. It's a rain of fire. Hail to the kingdom of heaven. Heaven, heavel, heaving. Heaving equals full. Spatial value is +1. And ultimately it starts to cool and it swells. That's the thumb, number 5. Gravitational and quantum mechanical waves. UV, gamma, alpha radiation. Why? Helium. And when it comes to consciousness, you have gamma waves here. This is heightened awareness. This is very sensitive. So whenever it's in this phase, when it's at absolute 0, and combination with the Q, H4 is very gravitational sensitive, gravity sensitive. So it piles onto itself. This would be the blue shift because you are this point, 0 point. You're here. You are the singularity. It's blue shifting, and then it'll red shift. So these sensitive gravitational waves, this is heightened awareness. This boson, muonic stage here, this is theta waves. Stage here, semicolor with fermion, tauonic, these are delta waves. The hottest here, this is the alpha waves. The pointer finger here, observation of the universe, the current universe, this is beta waves, which reduce back down to the gamma waves, which are heightened sensitivity, awareness. Now, the reason why the universe itself is the beta waves is because alpha is the beginning, beta is the body of time. That's the current time. And then omega is the end. So you have your past, present, and future. We also get our bodies from our mother. And mother is a beta. The female is the beta. The male is the alpha. So it goes from the negative spatial value to holy superatom helium-4. It's -460 degrees here, moving towards -459.67, -452.20, and then it gets into the trillions of degrees. But prior to that, it gets to 2.7 Kelvin, which is a spring method, or spring time, before the universe, before the singularity was born, before the conception of the universe. Because when you have alpha and beta, which is nuclear and electrical energy, you have conception. You have male and female entity. So the universe was conceived. It's a fractal being within a womb, supreme being. But at this rising, there's 2.7 Kelvin. It gets to about 2.7 Kelvin, which is still cold, but it's considerably warmer than -460, or absolute 0. And the fall here, which is the current universe, is also 2.7 Kelvin. And I mentioned that at nexus point in the last few videos. Now, technically, we have 7 senses. Well, we have 6, and potentially the 7th. The first one is consciousness. The second one is touch, which is the warmth, the love, the feelings, feeling the warmth and light. Remember, sensitivity here, awareness. The third is to see. The fourth is to hear. Those are the fundamental senses. Then you have your evolutionary or adapted senses. So you have evolved senses or their adapted senses, which is to smell, to taste, and then the seventh is telepathy. Lucky number 7. So yes, the universe is a plasmatic process. It's a plasma process of gases. It's a inhale and an exhale. It's a hydrogenesis. It's a watergenesis process. It's a water cycle. It's a gigantic quantum water cycle. See, you can apply numbers to a picture, or you can apply numbers to a word or temperature. But ultimately, without those as a concept, you don't have anything. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I can have 1,000 pictures. I can have thousands of degrees. But ultimately, the fact is that I have to have at least one picture, one word, and one temperature range to have the fundamentals. So to understand before the universe where there was no numbers, it's not about understanding numbers. The numbers are only to replicate the science. We have to understand the fundamentals, which are putting it in the proper perspective, which is how to visualize it, how to put it in the proper words, and how to understand temperature. Because temperature is really easy to understand. It goes cold, warm, hot, warm, cold. And you can replicate this on a burner, on a stove. Oh yeah, whenever this is C, A, B, C, 3 times 6 is 18. So C times 6 equals R, because 3 times 6 equals 18, and R is 18, and C is 3. It's also the speed of light squared. It's also the creator, you might say. And remember, like I was saying, spring and fall, or a temperature, a nexus point is essentially a gradient or a grade, and they can rise or fall. They're not a deterministic hot or cold. They're a range of temperatures that both share, whether it's rising or falling. These are two opposing factors, but they share the same traits. That's a gradient system. And hot and cold, like I said, they're deterministic. So it's all about temperature, degrees. Degrees apply to circles, angles, and temperatures. So we live in a gigantic degree. And the analogy with the deterministic hot or cold would be at the end of the year, you either pass or fail. And that's what's determined by your gradients. The gradient here is going to be determining that we're going to get a cold. The gradient here is determining that we're going to get a hot. Oh, just to clear something up, when it's talking about the triple alpha process here and the helium and stuff, this is actually a universe that has already been formed and died and is forming again. The wheel, again, it'll start rolling faster once a universe is formed, because once it's all burned out, there's still residual traits that are left, residual elements, mainly carbon and helium. And basically, a stellar mass black hole is a quantum mechanical superfluid of deuterium. It's like a gigantic mass of cold liquid deuterium. Bose-Einstein condensate. The supermassive black holes are likely deuterium, but I know for a fact that intermediate black holes are helium, helium-4. Helium-3 is bosonic.